Good morning and welcome. My name is Patrick Andres. I'm the Regional Vice President for Hotels and Food and Beverage at Oracle Hospitality based in Singapore. It's my honor this morning to host a CIO panel. During this session, we will focus on digital transformation in hospitality. We know that today more than ever, it's imperative to innovate, to adapt, and to grow as we get back to hospitality. Before we get going, let me start by welcoming our panel. First, Kang Nguyen Trier, Group Chief Technology Architect at Accor. Adrian Hardwick Jones, Vice President of Design and Technical Services at Centara Hotels and Resorts, based in Bangkok. And Shrikant Shinoy, Senior Vice President of Innovation, Digital Transformation and Strategy at Langham Hospitality Group, based in Hong Kong. So first of all, gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us today. I really appreciate you taking the time. And let's hope we have a very engaging exchange today. So let me start with you, Adrian. As we emerge from the pandemic, what are some of the key areas of technology you are most focused on at Centara Hotels?
For us, Patrick, and it's all been about completing the integration journey and moving to cloud that we started now back in 2018, I think it was. We used the period of COVID, the challenges, the slowdown in our business to move from cloud 1.20 to 20.x. That's been a big change for us because it also represented the company really embracing the idea of cloud technology, new systems and processes. And if you like, the support within the company grew because we all had to move remotely, something we could never done in our old system. And so the journey we started with Oracle a few years ago now have gathered momentum because people realize it is the way of the future and it really matters rather than it's a new toy to play with. It's something serious and we had to embrace.
Okay, thank you. Kang, you represent Accor Hotels and you're based in region, but obviously Accor has a global presence. Has it been similar focus for Accor?
Yes. So hi Patrick. Hi everyone. Clearly the focus on the cloud is something that is key and has become very predominant since COVID, and as well for Accor infrastructure regarding the distribution systems, but also about the cloud infrastructure for hotels within hotels themselves. And I would say two other topics where we're also very much focused on today. One is around all the topic of contactless technologies in hotel, because it's one of the key enablers also to, I think, to ensure a safe and seamless experience for guests into this new world. And the third key area is around guest personalization. So this one can seem, a bit counterintuitive because currently I think it's more about getting guests into the hotels. But that's why actually we have decided to invest in guest personalization to prepare the future, because what we believe is that we are entering a context where there will be a lot of volatility, a lot of uncertainty, where, for example, when you are in Singapore, where can you go, depending on all the requirements, the moving requirements. And so recommendations to guests on actually where you can go easily and smoothly is also becoming a key topic.
Thank you. Shrikant, from your perspective on Langham, so again, Langham has a global footprint, not of Accor scale, but have things been similar for you?
Yes, look, I mean, we face many of the same challenges that Adrian and Kang talked about. So for us, personalization is a big focus. What we see coming out of the pandemic is a couple of trends in travel, right, with regards to our customers. We see that our guests are going to value travel a lot more. So travel is going to become maybe more of a special thing for them in the short term. So we need to craft those experiences for them. And we also see that there is, of course, in the current situation, we have a lot of local guests with us. So we have guests who are coming for staycations, and they tend to be also a lot more demanding in terms of, and justifiably so, in terms of the kind of experiences that we create for them. So personalization is a very big focus for us. We've created some platforms to have a unified guest profile, and now we're really working on enriching the data behind that, so that we can then craft those experiences for our guests. So if we know, for example, somebody coming to stay with us likes a particular kind of tea or a particular kind of wine, then we make sure that that's there in their room setup. We sort of try and assign rooms, with their preferences in mind. So some of those little touches really just to help make those experiences that much more meaningful for our guests. The second area that we're focusing on is really our presence on various digital platforms, right? So we are finding that our guests want to access us now, not from just the traditional channels of website or online travel agency, and that's more or less it. They want to find us in many different places. As you pointed out, Patrick, our global portfolio, we have about half of our hotels in China, which from a distribution point of view is a completely different universe almost. So we've been working also very hard to build up our presence on a number of these let's say non-traditional platforms historically for a hotel company, but now becoming more and more important. We've set up in the last couple of years our WeChat presence in China, our Fliggy presence. We're also trying to work on things related to enhancing our web presence and trying to give guests reasons to come direct to us. You'll see more on this in the coming 6 to 9 months. And there, again, it's also trying to answer the trend that's coming up more and more about the cookieless world that people have been talking about, that big tech players are now pushing for, where you now need to collect more and more first-party data in order to be able to market to your guests. So these are some of the trends that we've been seeing, some of the important trends, and this is what these are some of the things that we're doing to respond to those.
So I've heard, move to cloud. I've heard a sort of driver being personalization and some of the changes going on beyond the industry. What about the employee? Are there sort of initiatives in terms of technology targeted at your employees as well? And I'll perhaps Kang, you want to take that one first?
Yeah, so actually for employees, it's true that I think for every one of us and also people in the audience is that overnight everybody was working from home, while people were working mostly in the office before. And I think that the driver is really that is the topic that now I think most companies know that they are going to be in the context of work any time from anywhere. And this topic is clearly driving all the, I would say, adoption of cloud tools that typically for Accor, it's a lot based on Office 365. The surge that we see in the usage of MS Teams, not only for doing chat, but also for collaboration between the teams which do not meet physically anymore. And I think it's here to stay because probably we are going to be in a hybrid mode where people are going to spend some time in the office, but also a lot of time working from home or in spaces closer to home in the new context. And so we also see that it kind of helps, the change in terms of usage for employees, because here it's like you don't have the choice anymore. You really have to adapt with new tools.
To add on to that, Patrick, if I may, we're seeing two issues. We're seeing the need for our employees to be far more flexible and multi-skilled, because when they're working remotely, they're not just doing one job, particularly when you're in a sort of lockdown position, the market is less, you need fewer people to do many more things. So multi-skilled and having technology to help them do that, both remotely and through education and training, is something that's really has come about. But the other one is that for our physical employees on site, it's the opposite. They need guests to interact with, and technology can't really help their problem. What we do look at is more and more how can we sell the hotel online to the local community, and in that interaction, and that's changed the way we look and approach many of our activities, and even way we look at preparing food, presenting food, and that's in our skill set, but not so we say through technology as normally mean, but certainly by embracing that into a business model that we never really considered before.
Yeah. Shrikant, anything from your perspective?
I think just to add to what the other two gentlemen have said, I think this is where also cloud platforms really help us, right? Because a new cloud platform is architected and has an interface. Actually, it's more the interface that I'm thinking about that a younger generation is used to. So today, as more and more of the younger generations come into our business, and we need to do what we can to retain them, to engage them. We need to be able to provide them with the digital platforms that they work on, that are the kind of things that they're used to playing with, right? I mean, these are the kind of, so this is where having a cloud-based, let's say, Opera system with a more modern interface, rather than the old on-property version where you need to know your keyboard shortcuts and so on and so forth. That also helps with engaging that newer generation of workforce that is coming in.
Yeah. In terms of deploying new technology, has the last year, or has it been more challenging, or has it been seen as an opportunity to sort of take this time to rethink processes, rethink approaches? Maybe I can start with you this time, Shrikant.
Look, it's been a bit of both, right? I think on the one hand, there is recognition that things need to go digital, right? The whole world is doing that. I think I saw a stat that in US retail, in 10 months last year, the market share grew by as much as it had grown in the 10 years before that of e-commerce as a part of retail. So this is clearly the trend, and there is a recognition of that. And therefore, there is a desire to invest and participate. But on the other hand, when it comes to implementing some of these things, obviously we need our hotel teams to be engaged and to really make those technologies a reality in terms of delivering the business impact. And when our hotels are short-staffed, when they are facing lockdowns and they cannot get staff into the hotels in adequate numbers, it's a little bit hard also to then have those conversations about how do we change the processes. What is the best way of using this and deploying this new technology? So that's a challenge that we have faced. But what we're trying to do is to take a bit of an agile approach. So try and deploy something, where it is possible to deploy in that moment, and then take the lessons and apply them elsewhere. But yeah, the reality is a bit of both. We see the opportunity, but we also see the resource challenge.
Okay. Is it similar for you, Adrian?
Yes, I think probably for us, because we are Indo-China focused, and the whole COVID has been a massive impact on our business stream. Effectively, for 18 months, we've no of our markets have we had foreign tourism, and we're a leisure-based company with no guests. We look at domestic business now with a much different light, but Bangkok and Thailand is designed for 13 million visitors a year, and we've had 0 imports of visitors, and the population is not like in Australia or States. It's not a wealthy population that can support that kind of business model. So it's a tough environment. So if you talk about for our managed properties that have not moved on to cloud, they're not interested in talking to us, and we'd be wrong to approach them. So in that case, it's nothing's happening. But in terms of our own portfolio, where we have already invested, then we've looked at this situation to see how can we enhance what we are set out to do and speed up that journey so we can be more efficient in the process. So in that sense, we've continued that investment to make it stronger system with the view, which is part of Centauri USP, we test, we try, we make these all work in our own properties, and then we engage our managed owners with a worked out solution. So we haven't stopped on that process. And if you like, the benefit for us, we also, despite this lockdown, managed to grow. In July, we opened our biggest hotel yet, 1,000-room project in Vietnam, all done remotely and all possible for cloud, both through training, everything involved in that system, which we could never imagine before. We would have just, that hotel would never have opened. And that continued on. We did another property in August that opened. I have one opening in Dubai in October. So that sense, cloud has allowed us to continue to grow, and that's been amazing. But in terms of investment with managed owners, sorry, no, it's too hard a marketplace at the moment.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is you have to keep your eye on on the future. Near future, longer term, but the challenges of the short term are holding you back. Now, is it more difficult if all of you or most of you have a mixed portfolio of ownership and managed properties and some also franchised? Do you see a difference between the different interactions? Maybe Kang, we could start with you on that one.
Yeah, I would say it is very much depending mostly on the regional basis. I think today, if you look at the trend, hotel owners, whether they are present more in Southeast Asia or in Europe or in the Americas, China, the picture is still quite different because of because of the domestic market, as Adrian was saying, whether actually the domestic market can sustain activity in the hotels or not. So I wouldn't say that it's a very much a case-by-case basis today. I think it depends a lot on how much hotel owners can actually handle the situation, which has been lasting for quite a long time now, on the specificity of the country in terms of policy, in terms of lockdown or openings. So I wouldn't say there is any pattern, but the one thing that we do see, and to come back to what Shrikant was saying, is that this topic of scarcity of workforce, which is today due more to the fact that the business was down, I think it's a trend that we do see happening even with reopenings, meaning that in countries where business has been picking up, actually hotel and hospitality in general, even F&B, etc., have difficulties to hire back people, and which means that from a trend perspective, I think the topic of automation of process in the hotel is going to become even more important, because it does not mean that as business is coming back, hotel will be able to hire. We may have challenge to hire back people to serve the guests, and that's where typically all the digital I would say advances that we've seen in the past months are going to help. Typically, for example, in Accor, we launched Accor Key last February, which is the digital key that you can have on your mobile to open your room, coupled with online check-in. It means that that we offer something which is both safe and seamless for the guest, which is a guest expectation, but we also help the hotel operations actually with I would say with the less hotel staff available to still be able to operate, and maybe to focus the hotel staff on more added value services for guests. So I think this is something that is a current real challenge, and I think that things that are put in place are going actually to not only solve the current challenge, but also the long-term effect that we see from this pandemic.
Yeah.
And Patrick, if I may, just to add, into that. There, we see the same thing. Thailand always had a high number of employees per hotel regionally, but we are seeing that there is going to be a real shortage coming back. We're not going to be able to encourage people back unless we're paying high prices, and we see the pressure on the airlines. So we do see significant change where, if you like, the infrastructure that we've been putting in place will actually gather momentum, whether it's owned or managed, going forward by the need to reduce costs, not to pay up through the market for staff, and find other ways of making the system work. So I think that change is going to be quite significant. So I think it's, in one sense, it's going to be far more interesting in the next 18 months than the last 18 months.
Yeah, I think Shrikant alluded to that a little bit earlier when he talked about the expectation of the tools available to employees, and I hope I'm interpreting that properly, but you know that there was an expectation of the sort of the young modern hotel worker to deal with completely different tools than they had in the past. So that might be, you know, as well with personalization from the guest side, that whole employee, you know, retention and making sure you have enough staff is another driver for this move to cloud and to, you know, products that are more suited to modern workers. And you brought an interesting point that like more than just, is it the different kinds of hotel, you know, owners or franchisees or management, but also we've seen a very different geographical landscape. So Shrikant, maybe to you know, Langham has a presence in you know, Europe, North America, Asia, China. Do you see like a difference between those markets and the short-term impacts and sort of the directions for the future?
Yeah, look, I think absolutely right. And I agree with what Khang was saying, that the differences that we see are not perhaps between owned and managed hotels. In that sense, for us, our parent company and our asset managers keep us honest enough with our own hotels as well. So, you know, they treat us with the same level of scrutiny that perhaps a third-party owner would. What we see is the differences regionally, depending on essentially at what stage the pandemic is at and what level of lockdown those particular regions are in. So in Hong Kong, we face a similar marketplace to what Adrian was describing in Thailand, where nobody's coming in, and it's all reliant basically on domestic business. Now here, we are fortunate that there seems to be a little bit more traction in the staycation space, where people are coming and taking those breaks, perhaps because our residential apartments in Hong Kong tend to be quite small, so the staycation is an attractive option. But then, you know, what the variances that we see in terms of how the markets are evolving, and therefore also driving the hotels' willingness and ability to spend and to invest in some of these areas, is essentially at the moment all driven by the one major factor, right? It's about where they are in their pandemic recovery, and what they're seeing as their business outlook for the next sort of 12 to 18 months based on that. So if you take the US and the UK, they seem to be going with this sort of live with COVID kind of approach, where the markets are a bit more open and getting a bit more traction. If you look at this part of the world, in Hong Kong or in Australia and New Zealand, there is a more restrictive approach right now. And in China, we hope that they are coming out of the latest stage and should hopefully be back to some degree of normality in the next few weeks.
Yeah. Is it a similar picture for you, Khang?
Yeah, overall, I think that's indeed this very much picture where I think that as long as international travel do not resume significantly, it's going to be very specific country by country.
So the last 18 months have had a fair share of challenges, but is there anything positive in your view that came out of it for the longer term?
Right. The fact is we all survived. It's probably the most positive thing. I mean, it's been challenging for all, but I think what is shown in terms of hospitality trends of what will be long lasting is that we've all learned to be more adaptable, more agile, and offer different types of stays and markets, and I see that staying. Staycation will be part of the agenda. Reaching out to the local community through F&B offering will be part of it there, and hospitality industry needs to adapt and embrace that flexibility to make ourselves more relevant for the marketplace. And in that same spirit, technology that itself allows for that agility, that allows for that flexibility is key. And I think that infrastructure that we're all been working on to put in will really deliver goods for everybody going forward. Because that's, to me, what I think is we all have to not only live with COVID, but understand that impact on the business and say, how are we going to be stronger for it? Who are the partners that can actually adapt with us to that journey? And that, I think, is the strength from it all.
Yeah. Shrikant, anything?
Yeah. Look, I think there have been some positives. Of course, it's been a challenging 18 months, for us 21 months, because we have our hotels in China, where it started, of course, a bit earlier. But there are some positives out of this, right? So the first one that I would say is that I think coming out of this, and hopefully we do that at some point in the not too distant future, coming out of this, I think people, our guests, travelers in general, will hopefully have a renewed appreciation for travel and for the joys and the wonders that it can bring. So I think that will help us to sort of rekindle some kind of enthusiasm, and if we can then create the right kind of experiences for those guests, it can help us to build more meaningful relationships. Beyond that, I think, as Adrian also talked about just now, it's about the digitization, right? I mean, 2 years ago, if I was having a conversation, whether it was with some of my fellow executives or with other industry peers, when you talk about things like contactless technology, and when you talk about other digitization elements, there are question marks. Really, do our guests really want a contactless experience? Is that really something that we want to invest in? Is that something that will give us the appropriate returns? Well, those conversations are gone away now, right? Everybody sees the need for this. Everybody is seeing that benefit out of it. It's now a question of just trying to do it in a way that still can match the abilities to invest, given the sort of market constraints and given the financial constraints that some of our hotels face. But I think that we've made a big leap in terms of winning that argument about the benefits of digitizing some of these processes. So I think that's another positive for me as well.
Okay, thank you. Kang?
Yeah, I very much agree with what Adrian and Shrikant are saying. Is that I think that from my point of view, hospitality has been quite lagging, been behind in terms of digital transformation compared to other industries for the past few years. And that, but then with this crisis, I think that now the perception of how technology can enable the business is much more understandable from non-technical people like hotel owners or leadership, which are less tech savvy, I would say, because the thing is that before, hospitality was growing. When things are going well, you don't care so much about actually how you can really transform things, because you don't really need to transform that much. But when your business collapses overnight and then stays flat at the bottom for many months, then when you start to understand that, okay, with cloud, you can scale up and down your infrastructure from 100 to 0, and that it does have a positive impact actually to handle your cost. That's a different story. Same thing around the topic of processes that Shrikant was mentioning. I think the topic of process automation, which was a bit hospitality, where there are a lot of manual things done with a lot of workforce in the hotel in some countries, as we are saying. Now it's not the same story anymore. And that's where all the technologies around the process automation, I think, are going also to be very much on the agenda. And the last topic is indeed all the thing that around how do you ensure a safe and seamless experience in a world where today there are much more frictions. So interestingly, maybe just to mention, I was traveling not so long ago between Singapore and France for work, and I estimate that took me about 10 times more, to prepare to do the trip in terms of administrative process because of the PCR test that you have to do, the health declaration, checking all the requirements to go in a country and to go to the other country. And all this actually, I think, is going to be a challenge when travel is going to resume, because I think there will still be a lot of frictions. And that I think in hospitality, at least when people come to prepare their stay and then come to the hotel, if we can provide something which is smooth for the guest, I think that indeed it will be what Shrikant was saying at the very beginning, is actually how to make people feel at ease when they are in the hotel to really enjoy their stay.
Yeah. Thank you. I've had the same experience, and I agree. I hope they get more customs agents next time. Shrikant, I love what you said about the renewed appreciation for travel, and I am an optimist, and I think there will be this blossoming of travel. That's going to happen probably at the moment in a few months when things do open up again. One thing you also brought up was around this contactless, which leads to sort of more self-service. And there's been a lot of talk about this over the last 18 months. It's the hospitality is always a little bit fought with self-service because it's seen as providing less hospitality. Yet when I interact with my children who are in their early 20s, their belief in perfect hospitality is not having to deal with anyone. it's all self-service. So what's the view at Langham on self-service and contactless?
Look, I think our view is evolving, right? I mean, I think maybe not 2 years ago, but 3 or 5 years ago, we would have probably come back to you and said, look, Patrick, we operate luxury and upper upscale hotels. Contactless is basically taking the colleague away from the guest, and that's not what we are about. I think we're increasingly seeing that as a choice that we have to give our guest. We don't take away the option to interact. If somebody is coming in during the daytime, they're checking in for their holiday, they want to know a lot about the hotel's facilities and all of that, they can still come to the reception and get the full experience. But what we're working on to try and put in place is, if as a business traveler you're flying in at 11 p.m. and you just want to go straight to your room, then we want to enable you to do that as well. We want to give you that choice, and it's the same kind of thing. So we are also working on deploying messaging into our hotels. We're piloting that right now in one of our hotels, where you can then very easily just fire up WhatsApp or WeChat, and you can ask for things, interact with the hotel staff on those channels, rather than having to pick up the phone in the room and talk to someone. So that also opens up a lot of possibilities in terms of not just taking away the reluctance that maybe some people, especially in the younger generations, as you said, Patrick, have to maybe pick up the phone and talk to someone, but also it opens up other options. So now, if I'm out and about in the city and I'm coming back to the hotel in half an hour, I can reach out and say, hey, can you have a meal ready for my kid when we get back to the room? So it opens up possibilities for improved service experiences. So I think we're seeing contactless in that new light now, to say that this is not just about replacing a human with a kiosk or a robot or something like that. It's about giving our guests more choices about how they want to interact with us. And then that also opens up other possibilities in terms of how we can meet their expectations and service them better.
Okay, thank you. Adrian, what's the view at Centara Hotels?
I was very interested in what Srikanth had to say, and so, that may make sort of dovetails well with what we're thinking, but we're probably not as far along in that journey. We still have the view that from a point of view of check-in, we want that human interaction. But what we want is to make that process painless. So we're all going to be soon carrying a QR code around to say we're vaccinated. So it's kind of, can't you just have a QR code that has your identity, that what you're willing to share from a point of view of travel, and your check-in process is simple then. You don't have to say anything, do anything, scan my card, and let's just chat about the weather, the traffic, what's available. And that to us, I think, is where we would like it to go, rather than the point of view of a self-check-in process. So you streamline that so it doesn't become that barrier to travel that we were all mentioning, yourself, Patrick, and Khan. The other way that we are looking at it, and we could again follow what Srikanth was saying, is that in terms of personalization of service, it's one thing we've been looking at from day one when we moved to the Oracle Cloud, is that our TV channels are actually ordered in the same nationality as yourself through the PMS. The messaging is in your language. We're moving everywhere in our hotels to remove language and go to icons. So that, we no longer assume our guests are going to be white or male. That's not the case. So we need to change to that, and technology and that integration of technology allows that to happen for people to speak their language, whether that is Chinese, Thai, or English, or if you like, the modern generation where the language is emojis through TikTok or whatever. And that's what we see as where we need to be. So as always, hospitality is about speaking to guests in their language, but that language is no longer simple North American or English, right? And that's not the global footprint, and technology is the only way we can really achieve that.
Okay, Kang, any insight?
This one was interesting what you were saying, and what the example of your children, Patrick, is that I believe that as we offer more and more self-service to the guest, I think it's going to deal a lot with everything that is transactional, where I think that indeed for transactional things that you would need, you don't really want to speak to someone, either from, even if you are in an economy hotel or maybe even luxury. But and that's what I was thinking, with that topic of also the shortage in terms of hospitality workforce at the same time, is that, and this one is a real story in a hotel, in an Accor hotel I went a few months back. My daughter, so we happened to meet someone from the hotel. We started to chat, and I don't know how out of the conversation, then the person, so that my second daughter was interested into playing chess. And so what happened is that then she did play chess with this person of the hotel, who freed up some time, and was a super good moment, a super good experience. And probably that maybe that's what could be the hospitality experience maybe in tomorrow, where all the transactional services are provided by a digital self-service that people can do themselves, and hotel staff actually are more there really to, in the spirit of hospitality, and have more time maybe to dedicate to the guests, but on something which is very much more human than the traditional servicing that we were doing so far.
And Patrick, if I may add, regarding your children, they should come and probably stay at our cozy hotel, because what we find there with our Millennium Hotel is that, this is not saying sort of jokingly, but basically at the age of 30, we fire the GM. We know that age group will speak to their peers, but you put somebody 50 there, they're not going to stay. And when they ask where's the cool place to stay, if I know where it is, they ain't going to go to it. So it's like that ain't right interaction they want, but yes, the transactions which get in the way of that, they want it gone because it doesn't exist in the rest of their lives.
Mm.
Hey, Adrian, we just have to reinvent ourselves to stay young.
Correct,
at heart.
correct,
And
absolutely.
we'll be fine.
To stay young at first.
Yeah, that's a great story, Kang, by the way. And I think it's a good story for the customer, you and your daughter, and probably for that hotel employee as well. So it's a real win-win. Listen, on that note, and I guess I'll go from Kang to Adrian to Shrikant. Any final words or any final insight you want to share with the audience today?
Yeah, on my side, something which is a bit out of the conversation that we had so far around the move to cloud and stuff, but I think it's about the topic of pricing of hospitality solutions, which is interesting that I saw happening. So in Accor, obviously, we are using a lot of hospitality solutions or recommending a lot of hospitality solutions to hotels. And what I've started to see are pricing models much more based on the business activity of the hotel than on a per room basis, which is something very traditional. So for example, a company around IoT for aircon management, when the business model is no upfront capex for the hotel to invest, but actually it is based on a percentage of the cost savings on the electricity bill. Another company providing a digital concierge for in-hotel services, and something the business model is based on the number of interactions with the guest and not on the number of rooms. And I think that looking at how difficult the situation has been for hotels for the past 18 months now, almost 18 months, I think it's a model that is probably going to be very interesting for hotels, and maybe that we will see increasing in the future because, and we come back to the topic of the cloud, solutions now based on the cloud actually can leverage also on the price elasticity of the cloud. So I think that at some point, hospitality solution vendors should also start to think more and more about this kind of pricing model based on business activity.
Yeah, interesting. And I think there is a tradition in the hospitality space for, the commission model is the ultimate example of that. But yeah, a very interesting point. And it brings us to a true partnership in terms of our interactions. Adrian, any final words from you?
Well, I mentioned a bit before, but just to add in, I mean, being on the cloud has helped us to continue to grow that we couldn't have done beforehand. So in that sense, support for cloud-based solutions is much stronger than it's been ever before. But the issue comes back, as Khan mentioned, about the pricing model. We already moved to a portfolio system rather than a hotel system, but there's been a lot of interactions and discussions with many parties about the cost of that sort of contract when you have no business. So flexibility around that, I think, is something that's going to come more and more onto the agenda for everybody to find out what is that right solution.
Yeah, thank you. Shrikant, you get the final word this morning.
Thank you, Patrick.
Yeah,
so look, I think for me, this is a time of great transformation for our industry. We've been one of the worst affected by the pandemic. We see the business levels dropping quite significantly down to zero in some places. But I think that also makes it a very exciting time to work in this industry, right? There is a transformation that is happening, and we can be part of it and we can drive that. And that leads to innovation in all kinds of areas. I mean, we talked earlier about some of the technologies that we deploy in our guest-facing situations. We talk about some of the innovative pricing models that vendors are now starting to engage with. So it makes it a very interesting time for me, and I'm definitely excited about the coming 18 months, the coming few years.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you to all three of our participants. You were wonderful. And I am, as I mentioned earlier, an optimist, and I loved the renewed appreciation for travel. I think there will be a blossoming when we get out of this. And I do think that the winners are often the ones who who buy when there's blood on the street, or who invest during the darkest times. And the winners, we will see some clear winners emerge from this, from these last 18 months. So thank you very much, and have a wonderful day, everyone. And thank you for participating, and thank you for listening in.
Thank you
very
Patrick.
much.
Thank you.
Stay
Thank
well.
you. Thank you, everyone.
Cheers.